York's classic rock, Q1043.
All right, welcome back. Jonathan Clark in the studio with, a legendary singer-songwriter originally from Scotland. We love to hear the Glaswegian accents in the studio from time to time. It's very good. The new album, I'm going to hold it up here, is Walk Between Worlds, which had its highest UK chart debut for the band in 20 years, top 10. And his name is Jim Kerr, or Jim Kerr, however we pronounce it in America. Kerr?
You're welcome, Jonathan. Take your choice, whatever feels most natural.
Pleasure to have you in the studio. Thank you so much. The band, you've sold like 60 million or so albums, something like that.
I wish.
Well, that's what it says on Wikipedia. Should I not believe that?
Well, every time I look, someone adds an extra 10. It's not me, but I'm not seeing it in the... I'm not seeing it in the checks.
The mailbox money is not as big as...
I guess it's on its way.
But, well, the band has a new album, and that's what we're going to talk about. And you're going to be on tour, simpleminds.com for all the info on that. Just a flashback for me, if you don't mind. The last time I saw the band here in New York City was at the Beacon Theater.
All righty.
And I don't know, it had to be in the 90s. But what I remember about that is, number one, it was one of the best concerts I have ever seen. I felt like I was in a stadium. Even though I was in a beautiful, historic New York City theater, I felt like I was in a stadium because that's the performance I was getting from the band.
Well, I'll take that as a compliment. We recently celebrated 40 years of playing live. It's 17th of January 1978, so it was only a few weeks ago that we hit that landmark. And people have been asking us, obviously they go back then, they say, what did you think then? Could you imagine 40 years later? I say, my parents weren't even 40 years old when we played that discotheque.
Where was the first gig?
It was called Satellite City, and it was a discotheque in Glasgow. And the point being was, it was a small discotheque, but in our head it was Madison Square Garden. I'd never been in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
I'd never been outside of Glasgow, but I knew about it. And people said we acted as though it was Madison Square Garden. And there was, so we've always had that stadium element about us. Maybe it's something to do with growing up in a tower block where you view the world
right, yeah,
with a larger dimension.
Well, that's a good way to start as a band, to pretend that you're in a bigger place, I would think, and sort of just give it 110%.
Well, who wants to be diminished before you've even started? If you're going to dream big, right?
So let me ask you this. Where was the first gig in New York City? Do you remember?
I do. Haraz was the name of the club. I don't know if you remember.
I don't know.
That.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, Haraz. There was a period, it was sort of CBGBs had just gone, and it was just before like the Limelight and things like that. So there was this place called Haraz, which if only I could remember the address, but it was obviously in
downtown East Village, maybe? Or?
Yeah, and the thing was, for us to come to New York was beyond dreams, because the thing about America, the thing about New York, we're all brought up with American culture, so we feel we know the place from watching Kojak and
movies,
Hill
and
Street Blues,
French
and all
Connection,
that
and
all of that.
Yeah,
and so you think you know the place, but you've never been. And then when you arrive, taking that drive in from the airport, I can't remember if it was Kennedy then. So taking that drive.
So you saw the skyline on
Gotham
the way in.
City.
Yeah.
And suddenly you realize that you're in too deep. It's like, this is a real deal now. We're going to be found out,
right?
And we played that night, and it was beyond parody, because we always read about, you play there and Andy Warhol will be there, or da da da. Well, lo and behold, Iggy was there, and
really,
it was like, don't tell me Iggy's in the front row. And so, in fact, it's online somewhere. It was a place called Haraz, and BBC were in town filming something much bigger than us, but we were starting to happen, and they came along, and they caught us in all our nervousness, Clive from Arista Records was there and all that stuff. It was all too much.
Right.
It was all too much.
You said recently that as a band or as a solo artist or an actor even, to achieve the heights that this band has achieved, the chances of that happening are almost like winning a lottery, and then to do it consistently for 40 years.
Well, absolutely. I mean, even to be in a band, when I put the context, I say this very proudly, there's been a lot of great music come out of Scotland in the past decades, but then it was a desert. There was nothing. And I'll tell you why, because back then music hadn't been, the industry wasn't decentralized like it is now. You had to go to London. So anyone that was in Glasgow or Manchester or Liverpool or Sheffield, they had to go to London. And when you went to London, not only was the city you left a desert, there was nothing happening, but quite a lot of the acts would break up because London, if you've not got money and all that stuff, living in a squat or living in a bed sit,
it's expensive, just like New York,
just like New York. So half the stuff would then collapse, and so there was nothing. So we didn't know anyone in a band. And anyone then, when we saw, the only bands we ever saw playing the local pubs were doing they were doing covers of Wishbone Ash and Eagles and stuff. Great, but, that wasn't what we were all about. So the idea that you could write a song, get a record deal, see your sleeve in a record store window, you had more chance of being an astronaut.
Yeah.
And I mean, the odds were probably the same. So I don't exaggerate. So the idea that, but of course, a year later, punk came up, and suddenly the lunatics had taken over the asylum.
Oh my God, that's right. Yeah,
it was game on for everyone. Suddenly, you'd walk down the road where no one believed in anything. You'd meet someone. What are you doing? I'm starting my own fashion label. What are you doing? I'm doing a documentary.
And the more things change, the more they stay the same, right?
Well, that was it. But at least people believed that beg, borrow, steal, and we did all of that.
Yeah.
That it wasn't that anyone could do it, because, you do have to be pretty good. But anyone could at least give it a go. And that was the thing where we lucked out, because 1977, when punk came along, that was the ethos.
Yeah. His name is Jim Kerr, the band Simple Minds, and the new album Walk Between Worlds. You did an acoustic album in 2016 before this new one, right?
Yeah.
Is that what happened? And that was sort of the catalyst in pushing you into this new album, which has... This new album, I'll hold it up here, the classic sort of Simple Minds post-punk sounds, but also there's sort of some new sort of cinematic music happening, too, on this new album.
The acoustic thing was a great thing to do. It had been in the air for a long time. We kept prevaricating. People were asking us, and certainly record companies managing, but we thought it'd be a bit bongos on the beach, and we thought that's not for us. It'll work for 2 songs, but how are you going to make that? Because the Simple Minds sound, a lot of those songs, I mean, it's huge.
It's a big sound, yeah.
And we of course you're going to reduce it, but we thought it might work for a couple of. So for years we kept prevaricating. Eventually, what happened was, halfway through the new album, Walk Between Worlds, experience has kind of taught us that it's great to break off at a kind of halfway point. I mean, in the old days, you didn't have that luxury of time. You got 6 weeks to write, record, and
then you're going on tour.
Get it out. But now what we tend to do is, halfway through, we sort of step back, because you're in too deep, and you need to step back so that you can come back with a real clear view. And what we usually do is we go on tour, or we go on holiday or whatever. But this time we said, let's look at that acoustic thing and see what's there. Lo and behold, we did an acoustic album, and we enjoyed it so much. We did find a way of doing it, our own way of doing it, that was less bongo on the beach. Anyway, we put together a band specifically for that, or we thought specifically for that. Well, it turns out 2 of the people involved there they brought so much energy, ideas, that we then brought them into the second part of the album, and so really that was a kind of stopgap in between. But we definitely carry things through. It didn't influence the sound of this album, obviously, because acoustic, well, it tells you what that's about. But it was a great maneuver.
And we have to mention your songwriting partner in crime all these years, Charlie Burchill. You said that doing the acoustic album and acoustic shows, that seeing Charlie play the songs that way sort of was inspirational for this album too, right?
Well, it was, in a sense. It seems a daft thing to say, but the Simple Minds sound prior, and still is, it's so layered that quite often Charlie would be doing stuff and you would think it was a keyboard. Basically what I'm saying is...
He's an underrated guitar player, by the way.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. And on the acoustic thing, because there was space, you could really hear him fly. And I thought, we have to make sure on the new album that Charlie's positioning is really comes out. And in a song like Battle and Star, which for some people is the centerpiece of the new album, Charlie not only plays his longest guitar solo, it's his best. It's like 3 guitar solos in one, and it's just a killer guitar solo.
And then speak about that song and the place that is Barrowlands.
Well, Battle and Star, for people who don't know, I guess Battlelands itself is like this ballroom in Glasgow that was, I think it's the late 40s, so probably a bit like Roseland
dance hall,
New York dance hall. Our parents, maybe even grandparents, certainly aunts, uncles, working class went there Friday, Saturday night, and it saw big band, it saw jazz, it saw early rock and rolls.
Benny Goodman, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It certainly saw the Rolling Stones.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But by the time we were growing up and kids, it had become less famous and infamous because that part of town was getting a bit colourful, and the police shut the place down, and quite a few violent events happened. So it had gone, and Battlelands put a shudder through you thinking about it. Anyway, lo and behold, when Simple Minds were breaking through mid-80s, we got the chance to film a video, and because it's got an amazing roof and Art Deco kind of thing, and the sprung floor, and the director said maybe we could get it opened again, just to let some kids in and you could do the thing. Well, we did. It went so good that the place has been opened ever since. It found a new lease of life.
Oh man, that's great.
It is great because it's a dump, but it's our dump,
right?
And it's rock and roll places. They'll kill me for saying it's a dump. It's not a dump, but you know what I mean.
No, I know exactly what you mean, and unfortunately,
they haven't bothered trying to make it trendy or pretty or trying to. It's just what it is.
And more importantly, it didn't turn into a bank or a clothing store or a coffee house.
That is the point. It survived, and if anyone you meet, if you meet the guys from the Foo Fighters or something, you say, what's your favourite 5 venues in the world? They'll mention it, or Iggy, or, eventually Dylan played it, Bowie played it, all that stuff. So we wrote this song as a kind of homage to that rock and roll temple, really.
The new album from Simple Minds, Walk Between Worlds, you went to Abbey Road to record strings, I believe, for some of the songs. Had you worked in Abbey Road ever before, or...?
Well, similar things, same with the venues that are all closing. Most of the great recording studios are also closing because the money's just not there.
And the rent's going up,
again, the rent's going up. And if it's the city centre of London or whatever, New York or whatever, it's gone. But Abbey Road, that's sacred. That's holy ground.
That is holy ground,
right?
The
album title itself, the Beatles says it all, and Pink Floyd, Queen, Kate Bush. In fact, the answer to your question was that John Leckie, the legendary John Leckie, who produced our first album, he cut his teeth as an engineer in Abbey Road coming up, and he was there in some of those Beatles sessions.
Man,
he's got great stories. However, in his wisdom, when he was doing Simple Minds' first album, Life in a Day, in 1979, he came up with the idea. He said, let's save money on certain elements of the budget, so we'll record in some lesser places, meaning we can go to Abbey Road for a week and you'll just love it. It'll be a trip to go. So, again, context, I'd hardly ever been out of Glasgow then. I'd barely been in a recording studio, and here we were in Abbey Road. Now, half the band, that was the most amazing thing, because Abbey Road, was like, wow, don't touch that. That's
like going to Sun Studios in Memphis, pretty much.
That's the Mellotron that they used on Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. So half the band, I remember Derek Forbes, our bass player, who was just full of chutzpah. He was loving it. Strangely enough for me, it was a bit unlike me. I kind of caved in. I couldn't deal with it, because I just thought, what does anyone need us for? When you're talking about Pink Floyd and the Beatles and all that stuff, I found it that week. It was like going for an exam every day. I couldn't relax in it, and it was all a bit upper class as well. The engineers and all that were all, they went to university and college, and
right,
And it just, funny enough, it just wasn't rock and roll,
right?
Ironically, however, we went back finally 40 years later, and guess what? Abbey Road had shrunk.
Really?
Yeah, because it was just kind of manageable now,
right?
It was.
I know what you're saying.
Do you know what I mean?
It seemed so huge when you first got there,
and
now you go back,
and it was
and
like
it's just
a studio.
It's a studio.
It's about what's happening in the studio,
right?
And what was happening was Charlie had that amazing guitar solo coming through the speakers, and there was about 40 classical musicians playing away with them, and
that's so great.
It was really great. So I mean, just fortunate, so lucky to be in those places.
Yeah, Jim Kerr from Simple Minds is with us. A new album, Walk Between Worlds, and on this new album, there's a song that has at least a melodic reference to the classic Simple Minds song "Alive and Kicking," right? Is that on the song "Sense of Discovery"?
It is indeed, yeah.
And how did that come about? Was that intentional? Was it a...
Well, funny enough, I was driving people crazy because we had this song, as you mentioned, "Sense of Discovery," which probably is, the way it's been picked out with fans and such, is arguably the most popular track on the album. And however, as good as we felt the demo was, and everyone was saying, I was saying something missing, and I couldn't articulate what it was, and I was really driving people crazy. What's missing? I don't know. And I just felt, I just felt as good as this is, this thing, it's not great. And there's a huge difference between good and great. You know, in reality, and also when you feel it. And I just thought, this record, we're going for great. And I couldn't work it out, but they were stripping the guitars down one day, and Charlie had this line playing in it. And the way the reverb was hitting, it was the pattern that was coming out was the exact same. I mean, talk about coincidence. It was the exact same pattern as the "What You Gonna Do" and "What You Gonna Do" of "Alive and Kicking." And
yeah.
I thought, that's the thing. And then they were like, we can't use that. And I said, well, we kind of can use that, actually. It's ours. If we can't use it, who can use it?
Robert Plant did it on a solo album, right? Remember that? Was he
David Bowie, "Ashes to Ashes," where he talks about Major Tom and all that stuff. People can reference. In fact, what we have is not exactly the same thing, but it certainly evokes it.
Right.
And I thought that was cute. I thought that was, and it's certainly done a job.
Simple Minds has had 5 #1 albums in the UK, have always been massive there. In America, and there has been for a while now a huge 80s resurgence. And for you and Simple Minds as a band in America, it really started with Don't You Forget About Me, the Breakfast Club soundtrack, then Alive and Kicking, as we were just speaking about. So when people hear Don't You Forget About Me on the radio here in America, it's a funny thing. They not only think of how much they love that song, but they might even think of what they used to wear in 1985, what kind of haircut they may have had, where they were going to college or high school, and, of course, the movie. So when that happened to you then, did your life change completely, like overnight, almost?
Well, the thing about us was we in America, it certainly, you know, blew the door open. Other places, the band, because things were always a little bit out of kilter. We had a record deal a few years earlier elsewhere than we did in the States, so there was always that gap.
Yes.
And other places, even in Canada and stuff, we were already kind of going through the door into, let's call it, the big league. So whatever we'd come up with next, as long as it was semi-decent, we were on our way. However, when we got the opportunity to get involved, I mean, up until then in New York and LA and stuff, I mean, the college radios and all that stuff, all the alternate radio stations, Simple Minds were big. But getting that classic, you know, that the bucks weren't getting spent.
Right, yeah.
Let's be honest.
Top 40.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The bucks weren't getting spent. However, A&M said, we've got this movie coming, John Hughes. He'd already done 2 or 3 things. It's going to be big. MTV are into it. They've got a song. It's got Simple Minds' name written all over it. Do it.
Right.
And we said no.
That's amazing.
Actually, we said something else.
Right, yeah, right, exactly.
But they said, what do you mean? And we said, no, we do our own songs. We don't do other people's songs. And they said, no, but you'll like this song. This made it worse. They said, you'll like this song because it sounds like you. And we want to hang on.
That's even more of an insult,
worse.
right? Yeah.
Hang on a minute.
Yeah.
So anyway, Keith Forsey sent us a cassette of the song, and to be fair, it sounded pretty good. It actually sounded more like psychedelic Furs, who I'm a fan of. I always liked.
Oh yeah.
Keith was doing a kind of Richard Butler vocal on it, but it just didn't sound like Simple Minds, and it didn't sound like even the sentiment, the kind of thing we would write and stuff. So we were a bit like, yeah. And then they sent us a rough cut of the movie. I mean, we were brats as well, you know. And we went, it's not The Godfather, is it? It's not Citizen Kane. I mean, So we were still kind of saying nah. And then, but the thing was that we met John Hughes, a gentleman and enthusiast, and indeed Keith Forsey's the greatest guy. I mean, Keith is just a guy who comes in the room and you want to be with him, you want to hang around him.
Yeah.
And he cleverly sort of said, look, you know, maybe we'll do something in the future, but why don't we just give this a go? And if nothing happens, you've got them off your back. And if something does happen, who knows? So we went into a studio in Wembley for an afternoon. He booked it for about 4 hours. As we were running through getting a sound, Mel Gaynor and myself, we came up with a Hey Hey Hey's intros. The end, the band went into this vamp where it breaks down, but there was no words. And I said to Keith, I got no words for this thing. He said, well, just sing the first thing that comes in your head. Well, I did this la 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 thing. And when it was finished, I said, that sounds pretty good. I'll write words for that tonight. And we'll come in tomorrow and I'll finish it off. He said, no, it's done. That's it.
4 hours. That's Beatlesque right there.
Well, it was maybe even less. And as it came out, we had this, you know, kind of bipolar thing where we were like, yeah, well, so what? What number is it?
Oh, by the way, how's it doing?
Yeah. So what? Who cares? What number is it? And, you know, it's like, oh, it's number 60, it's number 30, it's number 15, it's number 5. And here's the point. It's the most unlikely thing. I think the thing with us was people think we didn't like it. It wasn't we didn't like it. That's nonsense. I didn't think we felt we were worthy of that kind of success. It felt 4 hours. How can you do 4 hours? But in fact, no, what we put into the song was our sound, our spirit, I mean, the guys play amazing on it. We put our heart and soul into it.
Of course, yeah.
And it's amazing to see that.
Plus, when you recorded it, you were like 20-something, or whatever, how old you were at the time. I mean, at that point, when you're that young, the word tired doesn't even like enter your vocabulary. You're just running, 100% all the time, and like
absolutely. And I remember, here's the thing. I remember when it came out, because we were already working, we were in deep writing songs. Jimmy Iovine, we wanted to work with him and Boy Play. Iovine said, I'm not going to work with you unless you write the songs in advance, which we'd never done. And I was kind of hiding from Jimmy. He was coming to London to seek me out, and I went to Nice, and I thought, he's coming in a week's time. I'm going to go and I've got to get out the house.
Yeah, he was producing Bruce Springsteen before you guys, right?
I've got to go and write, and Jimmy. I've told Jimmy it was done, and now he's going to find out because he wants me to play my stuff. So I went to Nice, and I thought I'll just lock the door and look at the ocean and write songs. And I got the call. Well, actually, how about this? How cute is this? I got a telex.
Oh, telex! Oh my God!
Telex saying
throwback.
The song's number 1 in the States. So, I mean, I'm one of these rare things. I'm a Scotsman who doesn't drink, but I thought, it's not every day you're number 1 in the Billboard charts. I should go down and have a cocktail. So, I go downstairs. There's no one in the bar except me and the barman. And I said, what's the best champagne? And he said, well, I said, open it. And he pours me one, and everyone who comes in, I said, offer them a drink. And he said, what is it you're celebrating? And I'm saying, by this time I'm 2-3 jars in, and I'm falling off the stool.
The bubbly's taking effect.
Telling everyone I'm number 1 in America. No one's got a clue who I am, or no one cares. And I'm jumping up and down saying, number 1 in America, have a drink. And
drinks on the house.
The drinks on the house. I don't even think I had a credit card then. But anyway, thank God it was a success, because I'd have never been able to afford the bar bill. It went on and on.
I want to talk about another interesting piece of news we have to discuss, is that your former wife, Chrissie Hynde, who you have a daughter with, I believe, correct? Simple Minds and the Pretenders are going out on tour together, and this is the first time this has happened since Live Aid.
Yeah, that's right. We have a daughter and grandsons, I have to say.
Fantastic. Yeah. Obviously, the relationship is good, but this might be the first time in the history books of something like this happening.
Actually, that's a good point. It'd be good to find out if it has.
Call up Guinness Book of World Records, maybe, or something.
Yeah, of the great divorces of our times.
That's amazing, though.
It is. Well, you're quite right. The last time Simple Minds played with the Pretenders was in 1985 at Live Aid, and I met Chrissy. I was a huge fan. Charlie Birch. Everyone's a huge fan of Chrissy. She's one of the real greats and an icon. And what a bill that was. We toured in...
Did you do Australia maybe or something?
Australia.
Yeah.
Talking Heads, the Eurythmics, the Pretenders, and Simple Minds. It was a great.
Wow.
And I met Chrissy on the lift at the hotel. Now, in another time, another place, if that lift hadn't stopped there, I might have married Dave Stewart. Because the world has changed. And or Annie Lennox.
Yeah.
Or David Byrne.
Or David Byrne, right.
But it was Chrissy, and you know, it was a great, great story. Wasn't to be 5 or 6 years later, but we're family, and I'd always hoped that we would get the chance to tour with Pretenders again. Because when you tour, I love sharing the bill, especially when it's people whose records you would have bought,
of course,
or whatever. And it had come close a few times, but never really. So we're really looking forward to that. Yeah.
Well, I think you guys should play New York City again sometime soon. You know, Pretenders and Simple Minds.
Count me in.
Beacon Theater, maybe. I want to play the first single from the new album, Magic. What can you tell us about this song?
I think it is a good opening, and it's a good gateway to where Simple Minds are just now. The thing I like about Magic is it has. We shouldn't sound as energetic and as optimistic as we are in that track at this stage of the game. We should be more world weary and jaded and tempered, but we're not, and I think that's why it's the album Walk Between Worlds has two sides to it. The first side seems to be youthful, new wave, energetic, coming out of that whole period that Simple Minds came out of. Second side is more tempered, more reflective, been around the block a few times, I think is more beautiful. But there's two different takes on the band. They're good boxes to tick.
It's the new album, and everyone should go out and buy it from Simple Minds, Walk Between Worlds. For all the fans, man, thank you for making such great music for 40 years.
You're kidding me on. Music. What is music if people don't listen to it?
And the old saying is, if you find something you love, do it, and you'll never work a day in your life. And you're the perfect example of that. I know.
That's it. Long way to continue.
Yeah, exactly. And thank you so much, Jim.
Pleasure.
New York's classic rock. Q1043.